Over the last week or so, channels such as this and Valiant Renegade have been relaying the information about how badly Star Wars and Lucasfilm have lost money for the Walt Disney Company. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars. Far worse and far greater than what the mainstream media has been reporting. We brought the government documents to prove it. Now we're ready to do the same when it comes to Star Wars merchandise. We have a huge expose, multiple parts, multiple videos on the way over the next few days. It's time to dive into how Kathleen Kennedy took one of the most popular franchises in terms of fun and threw it into the dustbin of big box retailers. All right, folks, welcome back. It's WDW Pro, and we are very excited to have you. We're also excited to have Jesse Blaze Snyder joining us for the second time. Sir, welcome back to the channel.
Thanks for having me, brother. I'm really happy to be here.
Now, you have been rocking it with your podcast, and you do so many things that's incredible, but just your podcast in particular is just absolutely like a rocket. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing on the web.
Yeah, it's really blowing up. Twice a week, every Wednesday and every Saturday, I do a podcast called Coolest Geek Alive, and it's essentially my color commentary as a professional in the industry. Not only am I a comic book writer and a musician, but I'm also a voiceover actor and a host, and I've done a lot of reality TV. I understand this industry inside and out. In terms of this conversation, on top of everything, one of the reasons I'm as knowledgeable as I am is because I'm a toy guy. I'm the actual person who they are marketing all of their merchandise to. I'm the one who hits the stores. And if I don't do due diligence on every single line of everything that comes out, I might end up having to pay a lot of money for these toys. And I want to pay as little money as possible for all these toys because I want to buy as many toys as possible. And when you're somebody who wants to buy as many toys as possible, you have to become an expert on everything that's going on in the pop culture market so you can get the best deals.
Well, Jesse, in that case, you are literally the perfect person to be sitting in the chair in which you are currently placed, because we're going to dive into just how badly Star Wars has been decimated in the marketplace when it comes to toys. And in fact, folks, we're taking this extremely seriously in the way that we are going to present it to you. What we're talking about is we have been given information from a very high level. Although this goes into rumor and speculation territory, we take it so seriously that we have completely rewritten everything that was sent our way into a brand new voice to hide any kind of indicators of who this might be who has provided the information to us. We then went through and scrubbed out every single piece of information that we believe might be able to be used to track down who this is or who their contacts are. We've taken it that seriously. It is a level of scrutiny that we seldom apply, but we have a lot, and it's time to get into it. Jesse, here we go.
Secret agent stuff, man.
I'm telling you. And folks, don't forget, too, that we will have parts of this or even greater parts of this on thatparkplace.com, as well as follow-up videos coming out next week as we continue to break this down. It's a lot of info, but here's where we start with today. According to the source, Disney has experienced a significant decrease in their retail space within the top non-closeout retailers in the U.S. Now, this is not just Star Wars. This is everything Disney, losing nearly 40% of their retail space. This decrease affects all sections except for baby and preschool categories. Retailers have their own ways of categorizing products, so there's some subjectivity involved in correlating the data. Disney expanded its retail space when it acquired Marvel and Star Wars due to the increased appeal to boys. However, the appeal to boys is largely gone, and thus the retail space has shrunk for Disney by 40%. Jesse, is this something that you, as a toy collector and as someone who peruses the toy aisle at times, have you noticed a decrease in Disney space?
I peruse the toy aisle at all times. Past 6 years, I haven't really bought anything, but I still go to the toy aisle every single time I'm at any store. From at Target, I'm at Walgreens, Walmart, whatever. You know that saying, you can't BS a BSer. Well, when you're a merch guy, Disney can't send out a PR press release that's going to change my mind about what's been going on with Star Wars. It doesn't matter what they say. I've been seeing it in reality. The reality is the Star Wars brand was a merchandising juggernaut, and it has been for decades. Literally, Star Trek was gutted. Everything that happened to Star Trek happened because they wanted to get the merchandise sales that Star Wars has. And, you know, Star Trek's not as exciting of a brand, so they tried to make this Star Trek brand more exciting the way Star Wars was. Maybe they sell more toys. Of course, we don't like Star Trek like Star Wars, so it didn't really do anything to change it. It just killed that brand. But at the same time, the biggest brand, the brand everybody is trying to beat, Star Wars, has been noticeably just nosediving. And, you know, like I said, when you're somebody like me, you're waiting for the discounted versions of the action figures to end up at Ollie's for $3. You know, everything that's going to go on clearance will eventually be passed through these chains and end up at the TJ Maxx or whatever it might be. And you want to get the best deal on these toys. And as somebody who's going to get these clearance level toys because I know they're going to be there and I want to save money, well, yeah, I have been watching Star Wars stuff go to clearance, and I mean drop to prices you would never imagine that these things would be sold for. There's a great channel on YouTube called the World Class BSers, and they regularly will just go to these stores and be filming all the extra product that's left over after one of these movies or one of these TV shows comes out, and it is insane. It's very, very clear that the audience for this product has rejected the product that Disney has made.
Absolutely. And a big shout out to Jeff over at World Class BSers. He's been on the channel. We've been over there, and they do a fantastic job of covering this. Yeah. Let's get into some interesting historical information, allegedly from this source. I think you'll find this interesting, Jesse. During the sale of Star Wars, according to the source, George Lucas himself organized a substantial data collection effort to demonstrate the impact, i.e., the value of the Star Wars licensing, how much power this brand had through the merchandise. They even had to digitize old paper records, including listing info, retail SKU accounts, and consumer data. George Lucas allowed Disney's representatives to contact partners for information. Most partners supported the Disney deal at the time, but Hasbro was concerned because Disney was closer to Mattel back then. Very interesting. Here's some more. Some of the original trilogy sales data had not ever been digitized, requiring digging through old archives. The demand for Star Wars merchandise was so high back then that stores had to create extra space for toys and games. However, this expansion has since been scaled back and the toy market has changed significantly. Digging through this info was nuts. It was very difficult. It was tedious. At one point, though, to give you some idea of how popular Star Wars was back in the late 70s, early 80s, at one point you had solid cases of 72 units going into larger TRUs and Walmarts. A solid is a case of the same figure. 72 units of Han Solo to a store times top 8 figures. It was crazy. Walmart at that time added permanent section space to the toy and game sections of A and B stores. Do you know what that takes? That's a culture change. Jesse, the point of what this person is laying out, we're going to have the full communication sent through a filter, of course, but we're going to have the full thing on thatparkplace.com. But what they're doing here is they're laying out the groundwork for why George Lucas believed that Star Wars was so valuable and why Disney they went to their board and they said, here's why we need to buy this. Here's why we need to spend $4.1 billion. It's because they went back and they looked at these toy sales and they said, currently, we're strong with girls. We're not with boys. This is what this thing was. This thing was a zeitgeist in the 70s and 80s, and we can do it again. And then they killed it.
It's so funny, Pro, because, I mean, like, this is why they got Star Wars in the first place. They saw what the merchandise could not be stopped, and yet here we are. They've stopped it. And it's so, you know, my show, my podcast, it's all about honoring the mythology because we're the ones who purchase things. If you want to have a really strong intellectual property, it's the bottom up. You know, you need those people who are actually going to go to the store and buy the statue, buy the action figure, buy the special edition DVD. You need those people happy. We're the tastemakers. We're the ones who tell our friends, oh, yeah, you should go see it. It's really good. It's honoring the thing that I love. Everybody is looking to us. And when we're not buying the toys, we're not excited about the new show, neither is anybody else. It starts with those foundational fans. And if you do not please us, you get what Disney is getting in spades right now.
Exactly. You are on the ball. You are on the spot with that. Let's continue on the target. There are going to be folks out there who say, but the prequels, Star Wars popularity diminished. Well, don't worry, because our source has some information about that. It says, while the prequels could not match the original trilogy's popularity in toy sales, they still performed well in terms of units sold, surpassing many modern licensing efforts. However, modern merchandise dominates in terms of revenue, partially due to the shift towards higher-priced collector items. Shelf space for the average buyer has shrunk dramatically, though, at the big box retailers. Remember, folks, what we said at the beginning of this, Disney, according to the source, has lost 40%. That's all of Disney, 40% in terms of merchandise retail space at the big box retailers, the big three. Other properties from other sellers have knocked Star Wars into a niche space. Jesse, as you have looked today at the offerings across all of the toy lines, do you think that Star Wars is no longer one of the major players and now is sort of down there as a niche category, perhaps not even evergreen?
It's totally niche. It's not evergreen. And it's funny because it comes down to the intellectual part of the property. Intellectually, they've abandoned what George was doing. Even though the prequels did not necessarily go over well, we didn't love all the midichlorians and stuff, it still was intellectually in keeping with this larger story. Seeing Darth Vader redeemed, seeing the story of Anakin Skywalker, all that stuff. When you get to the new films, they're neither here nor there. They're essentially meaningless, or if you want to add meaning to them, their meaning is like detracting from the original trilogy. It's like, here, we're going to go erase the fact that we got rid of Palpatine. We're going to go erase the sacrifice that Darth Vader made. So they did a lot of walking back their mythology. And that doesn't create a situation where people want to go buy in to the thing. Because sometimes with toys, if you got a pretty toy, I'll buy it and I'll go and I'll play and I'll figure out a better thing. But when the ideas that are being, framing everything aren't there, and just the baseline ideas for this Force Awakens, everything it's just a regurgitation of what we had done before. And I think what we're seeing now with the merchandise sales is just a repudiation of everything. There's a Ninja Turtles movie that's out right now, and the Ninja Turtles movie was a merchandising cash grab because they weren't making any money for the Michael Bay movies because everybody hated the designs of the turtles. Intellectually, some of the things are all right. Some of it's crap. Some of it's good. But the toys look nice. And you could get those toys and you could play with them and you could figure it out in your mind. It's close enough to the thing that we like that people will still continue to participate in the merch space. And I'm sure that they're selling a couple decent amount of Ninja Turtle toys right now. However, when intellectually there's a disconnect and we don't want to wrap our heads around what the new order is or the first order and what these people are all about, like, that's it. The toys just hang on the shelves and nobody buys
languish.
Yeah, they languish.
Well, Jesse, we have saved the best for last. And folks, I want to say that the stuff that we received, we have scrubbed much of it out that's specific. We didn't scrub out what we're about to tell you. So let's get to the grand finale of this one. And this begins a series of videos. Jesse, I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this.
I'm excited to hear them all.
Here's what it says. Today, Lucasfilm does not compare its performance to both the original trilogy and prequel eras, citing the differences in times. In other words, Lucasfilm does not permit comps when it comes to the eras pre-Disney to now. Today, Disney would drool on the floor for prequel metrics. For prequel metrics, not original. And how much are we in a difference right now? According to the source, although I cannot fully corroborate this, but according to the source, full-priced sales for Star Wars today are down 65%. Then, the source says, one final point that really shows just how poorly Disney has performed. This is mind-boggling. Get ready, Jesse. This is something. And by the way, folks, rumor and speculation. However, I trust this source majorly, and some of the biggest scoops we've ever had on this channel that absolutely came true came from this source. Just saying. The best year at Kenner, remember Kenner was in charge of Star Wars in the beginning.
Yeah.
The best year at Kenner for Star Wars merchandise sales back during the time of the original trilogy would easily, adjusted for inflation, outperform all the merchandise sales of the Disney Star Wars era every single year Disney has owned it combined. That, coming from one of our highest place sources, saying that a single year, the single best year Kenner had during the era of the original trilogy, had higher sales in terms of adjusted for inflation than every year Disney has owned this property combined. The board at Disney was convinced to go for this. The CEO was convinced to go for this under the idea that they could replicate the fervor that Star Wars once had. They haven't managed to even come close. 65% down since Disney got it.
It's
Jesse.
Just so crazy. The normies have no idea. They've got no freaking clue that this is what's going on. They've taken a property that was a license to print money and it's done. People just don't understand these casual, superficial conversations that go on Twitter where they're like, what are you guys talking about? Everybody's screaming that the sky is falling and that the comics market is imploding. It is imploding. The merch sales are imploding. Like it is so clear to anybody who is paying attention to the right things. You cannot allow Hollywood to continue to get inside out up its own tush, because that's what happened. It's just like they love to just perpetuate narratives about themselves, and they will continue to perpetuate the same BS until it is so clear to even regular people. But right now it's just people like us going, holy crap. I mean, those numbers that Valiant Renegade was pulling out of what the actual amounts of money that they spent on all these films are, not only are they spending more than they should be spending and making less than they should be making, they have been rejected by the fandom who isn't buying any of their stuff. And ultimately, dude, that's it. The thing of making a Star Wars in the first place, buying Star Wars, it wasn't about the movie. It wasn't about getting a nice score on Rotten Tomatoes. It wasn't about making a couple $1 billion at the theater. It was about making a couple $1 billion at toy stores. That's where the money is, man. The merchandise. And they have screwed themselves. The merchandise. Holy crap. I mean, this is just, it's the end of the world as you know it when people can look up these numbers and see how embarrassing this is for Disney. They spent a pretty penny on that property, and to not have anything to show for it at this point, this many years down the line, it's straight up embarrassing for Bob Iger.
Jesse, I think the Force's female has put a stake in the heart of Star Wars. Here's a great thought experiment for everybody out there. When George Lucas got into this is what we're talking about back when Kenner had the rights to Star Wars merch. I'm thinking that the toy industry itself was nothing compared to what the toy industry became in the last 2 decades, let's say. So
absolutely,
the idea
of Star Wars.
Yeah, so the idea then that Kenner outperformed all of Disney in every single year that Disney has owned it in a single year, at a time when the toy industry with action figures and spaceships was in its nascent phase, I stand in awe, and I believe this. I mean, I really do. I'm not trying to put out, fake stuff or this source is rock solid. I can't corroborate it. It's rumor officially, but
I can corroborate it. I'm in the stores. It's insane. They're not selling things. They've had a little bit of a burst of interest from Baby Yoda, but the going on, it's been very, very selective for people. There's still some classic stuff that can be sold, but generally speaking, there's a real straight arm at all the stuff that they've been putting out. And if you just wait a moment, you can generally get anything on clearance just a few months later.
That's right. Well, just as you mentioned, Valiant Renegade put out that great report. Jonas J. Campbell, the chief investigator on that, matching up all of those tax documents out of the UK to show just how badly Star Wars has performed at the box office. Valiant Renegade will be coming out later this week or next week with a report about the live action shows on Disney Plus. They've also got their financial information now ready to go as well. And so we here are hitting on this merchandise situation because you might say, oh, come on, Pro, come on, Valiant. Actually, Star Wars is making money because you're not including the merch sales. And it's like, guess what? We kind of got those too. We'll have way more, folks.
The biggest bomb is the merch sales. Like everything else is the superficial thing that maybe you can make an argument. The merch sales have been like this from the beginning. They've been soft from the beginning. Everybody, so many of the people who are online on Twitter that everybody wants to go shout down, they're my friends, my toy friends, and we know what's happening. You can't tell us that, you pee on our heads and tell us it's raining. We know that it's pee. It's pee.
That's right. Well, that's not acid rain. It smells like asparagus. Wait a minute. Well, folks, the takeaways from this video, again, according to the source, allegedly, Disney has lost 40% of its retail space in the last few years. Total sales for Star Wars down 65% since Disney got them. And again, according to the source, a single year, the best year that Kenner had, would outperform all of the Disney years of ownership of Star Wars when adjusted for inflation. We're talking about toy merchandise revenues. What a story, and it's just beginning. Another thing that's just beginning is Jesse Blaze Snyder and all of his progress all over the webs out there. Jesse, where can we find you on this great, big, beautiful web?
I'm on Twitter. You can find me. I'm Coolest Geek JBS. You can also email me. I'm Jesse Blaze at jessesnyder.com. But you can find me every Wednesday, every Saturday, Coolest Geek Live, talking about evergreen subjects in geek culture, from the perspective of somebody who's worked for every company and pitched every. Certainly have a lot of knowledge that I built up over the years. But mostly it's because I love toys so much. That's why I know so much.
Fantastic. And folks, don't forget to check out thatparkplace.com, where we will be releasing a only slightly redacted and, well, definitely reshuffled to protect the identity, but the full communique that we received. We also will be covering this on That Park Place, the YouTube channel. Next week, Monday, I believe, we will be bringing out more on this. And then we have more videos coming out where we're going to talk about even more that we have learned and read about from this source next week. It is all as we continue to keep you ahead of the culture curve, explain entertainment. And there's no better explanation for what is going with Star Wars than to look at the merchandise. It is down. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you do stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. We cover your comments. We care about what you think. This is not just a conversation between two people, but nay, it is a dialogue with a community. So join in. We read them. We often respond. Folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning. And unlike Star Wars, keep growing. And unlike Kathleen Kennedy, keep having fun.
This is Wilton the Troll reporting for That's Park Place, and I'm surrounded by loving and adoring people who are peacefully trying to make sure that poor kids aren't cold in the winter. And just behind me, you can see a totally natural bonfire for baking cookies or making marshmallows.
Yeah, so, Wilson, we're really appreciate the effort and stuff, but we're looking for real and, accurate news reporting on That Park Place.
So not like most news outlets, huh?
No.